know. Why don't you go take a look?
Yeah, because that sounds safe. Come here!
Resident Evil in your head.
Oh, come on.
Alright.
What's going on?
It's that damn memory card!
And what are we gonna do?
I know what we're gonna do. You ready to do this?
Hell yeah. There's too many of them.
It's no good. I'm gonna have to play Resident Evil on Gamecube. Game on!
One day, Bill was sorting through some of his old games and came across his old memory card. But something went wrong. It glitched, and every enemy he had ever defeated in video games was released into the real world. Now he has to replay all his games and defeat the hordes of evil villains, sealing them back into the digital world which they came. Game on! Resident Evil is survival horror. It's a game about making choices that could have fatal long-term repercussions. It's about taking your time and planning your routes, as well as uncovering the dark truth about a series of bizarre murders and a very spooky mansion. Resident Evil was released on the PlayStation by Capcom, creators of Street Fighter and Mega Man, and then later released on the Sega Saturn in 1997. Achieving critical and commercial success, it thrust survival horror into the limelight, borrowing ideas and enhancing from games such as Clock Tower, Alone in the Dark, and Sweet Home. I remember many people saying, "This is what adult games is all about. Everything else is kid stuff, damn it!" It was one of the first examples I came across where the Hollywood style of movies ran alongside a video game, with real life actors that played out the cutscenes, and there was a lot of dialogue in the cutscenes as you went throughout the game. It's a franchise with a lot of personalities and intrigue, and one I just can't get enough of, no matter how far they decide to take things. But the first in the series for me had one of the best settings, in the form of Spencer Mansion. A labyrinth of corridors and locked doors. You never quite knew what was round the next corner, and whether you'd prepared enough for it. The original Resident Evil still has a lot of cheesy charm for me, but it has aged considerably. It was also made a lot harder outside of Japan, with the auto-aiming taken out of the game, and a lot of the save chances reduced to make sure that if you rented the game you didn't beat it in a single night. In 2002 the game was remade for the Nintendo Gamecube as part of the Capcom exclusive game deal they had. They vastly improved everything from the graphics, the story, the gameplay. Everything from the original is here, but also with a few more surprises. You can pretty much pick up the remake on everything these days, and they only ever make it look better, with the gorgeous pre-rendered backgrounds making it very difficult for this game to age now. The Japan version has always been called Biohazard due to Capcom USA thinking it would be nigh impossible to copyright Biohazard in the States, but I always preferred Resident Evil. A perfect balance of item management with risk and anxiety with a really strong map design creates this perfect storm. Do you check around the next corner or the next locked room to see if there's any ammo or health for you? Or do you double back to save your progress, going down corridors you've been before, but maybe running into something that wasn't there before? Choice is yours. You should go ahead and play it this Halloween and then come back and tell me what you thought of it. Hang on, before you go rushing off, let me go and warn you what is filling these dusty filled halls.
Resident Evil.
Alpha Team is flying around the forest zone, situated in northwest Raccoon City. The Bravo Team was sent in to investigate.
One of the most memorable things of Resident Evil, be it either the remake or the original, is the beginning cutscene. And perhaps this is the best time to talk about the biggest differences between the original and the Gamecube remake. You see, the original's cutscenes were, well...
Stop it! Don't open that door!
No! Don't go!
overacted, shall we say, to nowadays standards, with its laughable delivery of dialogue destroying some of the game's most dramatic moments. See, it doesn't always hit the horror and anxiety tones they were probably going with back then.
Jill, run for that house!
The European intro cutscene also had major differences to the Japan release, with a lot of the imagery of dead bodies and wounds being censored, as well as the cast reveal, where the Japanese release had Chris smoking a cigarette instead of the dramatic camera stares.
Jill Valentine.
I mean, it was always going to get a mature rating, but I guess these changes were made to ensure as many countries would release the game as possible instead of banning it outright. So why was the game recorded in this kind of corny way?
Resident Evil.
Turns out there was a Japanese dub of the game, but the director didn't like the Japanese voiceovers and used the English dub instead for all versions, not realising how bad the translations actually were, as none of the game development team spoke English.
Kenneth was killed too. Maybe by this creature.
When they remade the game in 2002, they aimed to set a more serious horror tone you'd expect from a survival horror game. You play as either Jill Valentine or Chris Redfield, members of the STARS Alpha team, led by Captain Albert Wesker and backed up with the experienced Barry Burton. They are tasked with finding the STARS Bravo team who went missing on their last mission. Reports have come in about people being eaten in the forest surrounding Raccoon City, and Bravo was sent in to investigate, but never returned. On arrival, Alpha Team didn't fare much better, with Joseph, the STARS firearms specialist, getting mauled by dogs, and Brad, the team's pilot, getting spooked and taking off in the helicopter, leaving the rest of the team stranded. With little to no choices left, they ran to the mansion close by to regroup. One thing all Resident Evil games do well is set the scene. Few games, in my opinion, do as good a job of placing you in the world and stressing the threat at hand. From here, the game separates depending on your choice you first made booting up the game. Did you choose Jill or Chris? First time players, I would always recommend choosing Jill, and here's why. A lot of the main puzzles in the mansion remain the same for each character, but due to slight ability differences, you witness them in a slightly rearranged order. Here's a quick list of the differences between the two. Chris's scenario often leaves him to fend for himself in situations with less weapons at his disposal. Chris does have more defense than Jill, but with Barry jumping in every so often to help and even give extra ammo, gives more guidance to first time players. As well as Jill's handy dandy lockpick to open small locks, which opens certain doors and drawers to ammo and healing items, where Chris has to find small special keys to do the same. Although Chris does have the lighter, which aids him in puzzles and burning remains, and a slightly better chance of getting a headshot, Jill just has more in her corner to help you deal with what's coming up. But it's not just because it's easier that I suggest Jill should be the character of choice for first time players. it's also the size of her pockets. You see, Resident Evil's main gameplay mechanic is item management, knowing what item to use where, what to take with you and what to leave behind. Once you have made a decision to pick up an item, you are stuck with it until you either use it or find one of the game's few storage boxes. This design is to punish the player for just picking up everything instead of thinking about what they really need. You could go out armed to the teeth, but what good is it if you can't pick up key items to progress? Therefore, you have the dilemma of what do you leave behind, and that's where the game gets you. A mistake here could force you to revisit rooms and corridors you barely survived last time, filling you with a feeling of dread as you come across a special carving in a wall, and you know full well what is needed to fit in that slot and solve the puzzle, but you left it way back in that other room. Only now there's a wall of monsters between you and it. See, Chris has 6 slots in his inventory where Jill has 8, meaning there is even less room for error with Chris, forcing more backtracking, forcing you to face what you may have run away from or trick you into a corridor that was perfectly safe when you left it, but not now. Once you have some knowledge of the mansion, I feel this works perfectly with Chris, but on the first playthrough, and especially on easier skill levels where there is more health and ammo pickups, what was meant to give you this feeling of terror of having to go back could instead frustrate. Playing Jill first allows you the room to get to the grips with the game, and then when you play as Chris, not only do you have a new arrangement of puzzles, this handicap of less room for items becomes the challenge it's meant to be.
There are only 3 STARS members left now. Captain Wesker, Barry, and myself. We don't know where Chris is.
Safe. For now. The team realise they lost Chris in the frantic sprint to the mansion. Hearing a gunshot, Wesker orders Jill and Barry to investigate while he secures the entrance hall. Concerned for Chris's safety, Barry and Jill storm the dining hall in the direction of the shot. It doesn't take long before they realise they are not alone in this mansion. Not knowing what they had found, they decide to report back to Wesker, only to find he has disappeared now too. With the mansion being so big, the two decide to split up to cover more ground, because that's always a good idea, leaving you, the player, alone to work out what to do next. Meanwhile, Chris, separated from the team, had found his own way into this nightmare. Armed only with his knife, he retreats to safety, but by the time he finds his own way to the entrance hall, the team was gone. So begins your investigation into the mansion incident. Working out where to go and do next is the real enjoyment behind this game. Like a giant grandfather clock, each piece to the puzzle leads to the next, and one step closer to the truth and escape. And be sure to examine everything you collect. Some items hold details that once investigated point out their use or become different items entirely. Resident Evil doesn't have levels, but its first segment still acts like any great first introductory level would. The mansion makes you feel small and at risk. So many places to go, no idea of your surroundings, you'll check every door to find most locked with a symbol carved into the handle, but you slowly build a map in your mind of where you can go and where is currently sealed off from you. Some nasty place zombies and a lack of ammo raises the tension, yet the game is actually funneling you into a set route, and once you survived a lap of the mansion, you will find yourself back to something familiar, but a layer of tension is shed. You now have a map in your head, your mind filled with clues, and an inventory that holds the key to what to do and where to go next. So I've got a story about this part in the game. My friend Matt, who was playing through Resident Evil the first time, and I was kind of like guiding him through it. He'd done his first lap of the mansion and got back to the hallway, and then just froze. And I was like, Matt, what are you doing? And he says, I'm not going anywhere. Just staying here. And he did. He was pretty much there for 15 minutes, not going anywhere until I explained to him that the game's not going to complete itself. But he was convinced that, Brad's coming back for us. Come on, Brad, come back. And I was like, nope, not happening. He was waiting for sunrise or something, whatever, I don't know. Anyway, he was adamant he wasn't going in any more of these doors. And when I sort of weighed up his options, he literally looked to the front door and he goes, "I'll take my chances with the dogs," and opened the door. And to his surprise, a dog jumped out and attacked him. He used his one and only ammo clip that he'd managed to find to kill this thing, and then stood there for another 15 minutes as he thought about his poor choices and what he'd done wrong in the world. If that doesn't sum up how Resident Evil affects people, and you know, the kind of events and surprises and how it messes with your mind, I don't know what does. But Matt's a funny guy, and that's a fun story that I'll always remember about this game, where I take my chances with the dogs. Just go down in infamy as one of the funniest things I ever heard, and his reaction was even better. But yeah, the time he waited for the sun to come up in Resident Evil, and it never was going to happen. I was sort of guiding him through the game. I think he probably would have appreciated some sort of co-op mode, for me to sort of jump in and help him out. Which is funny because the director of Resident Evil 1 has actually gone on record saying that there was always the plan to put a co-op mode into this game. That's why there's two characters with slightly different abilities. So anyone who's complaining that, you know, co-op modes in the later Resident Evils is not Resident Evil, it kind of always was the plan. They just ran out of time and could have put it in. Jill has found an emerald arrowhead and places it into a tombstone at the back of the graveyard. Lovely garden feature, that. It opens a secret location to a Freddy Krueger-like basement. Here she finds a book, a cryptic description about masks, and a key. A sword key. Now you cast your mind back to those locked doors before, and which ones mention the carving of a sword. Jill has her first mission, and you now have a task to complete. 4 curse masks to find. Retrace your steps, see what is behind the sword key doors, and come back to this furnace with all 4 death masks in hand to progress. Everything is a lesser puzzle leading to a bigger mystery to solve. You will retrace your steps to those dead ends, only it's up to you what door you open next and which ones first. Did you check everywhere, and could you collect everything to prepare for what's waiting for you up ahead? As the STARS members continue their investigation, Jill finds a tea room on the east side of the mansion. At first it doesn't seem anything special about it, just a shotgun resting in a display rack. As she lifts the gun, a trigger is tripped that leaves her in a tricky situation. Yelling for help, Barry hears her cries and blasts open the door to pull her out. This is where the infamous Jill sandwich line is spouted in the original game.
You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
Though it did end up spawning its own menu choice at the Resident Evil restaurant. And yes, that is a thing. There are many events like this throughout Resident Evil. These can differ between Jill and Chris, some cinematic, others player based. For example, Barry doesn't bail Chris out here, you have to find another way to get the shotgun. But doing things in a different order or under specific conditions can trigger slightly different events each time. Resident Evil likes to mess with you, hinting that something is there but it's not coming for you just yet. It will often hide things in plain sight, or in the case of the L-shaped corridor past the art gallery room, hide important resources like ammo under or behind things that at first don't look like they can be moved. Also, don't come down this corridor the wrong way. Not all events are useful events. Going through doorways at certain times, deciding not to kill a zombie to preserve ammo, leaving items behind until it is safer, all these decisions alter events. Resident Evil is a game designed to be replayed, so you come across these surprises that you may have missed the first time round. Like here, hidden away in the corner of the art gallery is a secret door. You can't even find or interact with this door on your first playthrough. But on New Game Plus you get a closet key that takes you to this secret room, with new outfits for the characters. Complete the game fast enough and you'll get things like unlimited ammo, invisible enemies, and even zombies strapped with enough TNT to destroy the whole mansion if you shoot them, with you still in it, resulting in an instant game over. So just because you've solved all the puzzles, doesn't mean you've seen all the secrets this mansion has to offer. While Chris has moved to the upper floors of the mansion, he bumps into Richard and Rebecca. Richard, Bravo Team's communications expert, is in a delirious state, speaks of a giant snake that attacked and poisoned him. Rebecca, the head of medical for STARS, and part of the Bravo team as well, is doing her best to keep Richard stable. With no time to talk, Chris has to rush to a medicine room to save Richard's life. The tragic tale of Richard impacts your campaign in different ways. Chris, more than Jill this time. His trademark combat shotgun is up for grabs should you save him from the poison. If you're not successful, however, Rebecca will play a bigger part in a later boss battle. Chris returns with the serum, and after applying the shot, they take Richard to safety. Now reunited with Rebecca Chambers, she will aid Chris as he continues his investigation. Where Barry supplies Jill with ammo and helps out in battles, Rebecca's extensive knowledge of medicine will allow Chris to heal his wounds, and she also helps with puzzles where Chris lacks the skills to get the job done alone. With Richard now stable, Rebecca watches over his condition as Chris heads back into the nightmare. Meanwhile, Jill and Barry cross paths once more, and it's important to note that when playing as Jill, even though she has a bigger inventory, you leave space for these visits from Barry, as if you don't have room at the time in your inventory, he will keep the ammo he was going to give you to himself. Where Chris was lucky enough to find Richard and Rebecca from Bravo team alive, Jill isn't so lucky. Finding her team member Forrest, Bravo team's marksman and close friend to Chris, gutted on the balcony on the side of the mansion. His grenade launcher is here for the taking, however, Forrest won't give it up without a fight. The way Resident Evil handles the camera is both creepy and menacing, and it is this approach to camera that makes the control schemes crucial. For some, Resident Evil's biggest nightmare is not the monsters or creepy settings, but the stumbling point that is the control and combat. See, starting my gaming career on a ZX Spectrum, playing games like Jetpack and Asteroids, I already had experience in tank controls when I played Resident Evil for the first time, so I never really had a big problem with them. But for those who don't know, instead of freely controlling your character, you command them with tanked style inputs, with left and right turning them on the spot and up and down moving them forward or backward. Shooting involves holding a button to ready yourself, and the rate at which you fire is slow, to put it lightly. Fixed camera angles obstruct your view of what might be trying to get to you, and it all feels like the game is fighting you. 'Cause it is. If you could run around the mansion like a ninja, it wouldn't be scary now, would it? There are truly spine-tingling segments where the camera shows you the action from under a table or from the bushes, giving you a sense that someone is watching and painting every screen with a sense of dread of what is lurking around the corner. Having free controls and a movable camera just wouldn't give you the fight or flight feelings this game has. Do you spend those last few precious bullets on something you can't see but think might be there off screen? Do you get closer to get a better look, risking health? You spend the first few hours of the game with very little to fight back with. This is the game teaching you there is another way. Run, and that never stops being a wise option till the end. If the combat and camera are still causing you grief though, here's a few tips. If you're not sure if the enemy is dead or something is truly off screen trying to get you, turn your back, ready yourself with the R button, and then press the L button. Providing you have the lock-on activated in the options, which is the default for the game, Jill and Chris will turn to any threat and aim right at them, so you can see if they are really dead or if you have a danger that's just outside where you can see. Also, the 180 turn is vital. Down and then press B will turn you instantly for quick escapes. However, if you're playing the original, you're out of luck, because they removed these features when it was ported from Japan as another way to make the game harder for anybody deciding to rent the game instead of buying it.
It's me, Chris.
Rebecca, can you play? Oh, what was that?
My interpretation is off a little. Let me practice for a while.
If the room is green, the room is clean. Words of comfort for my friend Matthew playing through this game for the first time. When you enter a new room, it will appear on your map in red and will stay that way until you pick up everything that room has in it. Once the room turns green, it means you have collected everything in that area, and chances are you don't need to ever come back to it. Inventory permitting, it might be best to collect everything on your first visit, or remember the rooms that remain red could be holding an item that makes a difference to your survival. While Rebecca is learning this song on the piano, you could always have a look around at the red rooms and see which ones of these you can turn green. Meanwhile, on the other side of the mansion, there is more than just zombies lurking within these walls. This is perhaps reflected best in the game's bosses. The battle with Yawn is a memorable one. While Rebecca and Chris weren't watching, Richard had recovered and decided to jump in to help Jill for a bit of revenge on the big snake. Yawn has the ability to poison with a single bite, so be sure to keep as close as you can to the snake's tail. It will try to wrap around and surround you, making it impossible to run. But under Jill's superior firepower, and that case of acid rounds that were given to you by Barry, Yawn retreats back into the walls of the mansion, leaving behind one of the death masks Jill's looking for. But not before finishing off his lunch first.
Yummy!
Jill has managed to locate all 4 of these masks, so it's now back to the boiler room to find out what exactly was lurking there all along. The Crimson Heads. One of the coolest additions to Resident Evil's remake is the Crimson Heads. Chained in the coffin in the boiler room is the very first Crimson Head ever created. Crimson Heads are faster and more violent than a regular zombie. To avoid crossing paths with the Crimson Head, it's important to remove the head or burn the body, or these savage corpses will rise to take a chunk out of your health. So be sure to clean up after yourself, because after a set time, what was once dealt with will be chasing you down for revenge. Crimson Heads still stun like zombies, so hit them hard or run around their lunges to put them down. Get too close and they will grab you, and unlike regular zombies, the damage they deal is much greater. In the coffin that the Crimson Head leapt from, Jill finds an artifact that unlocks the door to the rear of the mansion. Is this it? Has she found a way out?
Just going to check in on Sarah and see if she's alright against that zombie army I left her with. Seems like she's got things under control. Let's get back to the game.
This is Brad. If you can hear me, just give me a sign. Anything.
Jill to Brad, can you hear me? Shit, it's broken.
The thought I was done feeling. Now there are a few instances of this in gaming. Castlevania Symphony of the Night's Upside Down Castle, Zelda Ocarina of Time's Adult Link, that they kind of filled me with a sense of joy that the game was bigger than I originally anticipated. However, when I left the mansion for the first time and started to journey through the gardens coming to a second building, known as the Residence, I was just filled with dread, and rightfully so. Jill is the first to arrive. This run-down but large wooden shack is where the caretakers of the ground used to hang out. The residence is considerably smaller than the Spencer Mansion, but when you first step into this place you don't know that. I thought this was a second mansion starting all over again. You just find out there's a whole new bunch of locked doors, new sets of keys where the old ones don't work anymore, and new threats like acid-spitting spiders. These giant hairy tarantulas are deceptively quick. Try not to let them get close, as they can poison you, and you are better taking care of them from a distance. Okay, so a few more survival tips for you. Mixing herbs is well documented in the game, but consider this. Jill has less life than Chris, so you generally only need to mix 2 herbs together to get her back to full health. Don't think you have to waste an extra green herb every time. Also, don't think the best strategy is to put all your healing items in the box. Leaving them where they are does scatter their location more, so you could have less to travel to get a health boost. Defense weapons. These don't take up space in your inventory, but will activate if you are grabbed by an enemy. These do not work if you are grabbed from behind, so don't turn your back at the last moment in a panic. Sometimes it's best to face the monster and let Jill and Chris do their thing. You can also choose which item to equip by pressing left in your item menu, so you don't waste your more powerful defense items on weaker enemies. Defense weapons consist of daggers stabbing enemies to release their grip, tasers with Jill to deal massive damage, or grenades with Chris that often lead to a one-hit KO and decapitation. Finally, aiming up. It goes without saying that aiming down hits enemies on the floor, but aiming up with the shotgun and getting close improves the chance of a headshot.
No, that wasn't part of our deal. But it's not necessary to destroy stars.
Searching the residence, Jill begins to uncover the truth about the mansion and what was really going on here. Sick experiments and mistreatment of life is told through the many files of Resident Evil, and is a fascinating way to tell the story. Drip feeding you accounts of what happened to the individuals that worked here. It leaves your imagination to fill in just how horrible all is, but also expands the lore in huge ways. You read accounts from the people who live it, often them being as clueless as you are, but piecing everyone's accounts together builds the narrative like a detective. Plus, for the impatient out there, you can skip them all completely. No cutscene to slow you down, just file them away or leave them alone. After moving some bookcases, Jill happens across a ladder that leads to an underground facility. The truth is now just scratching just below the surface, while Chris has also found his own way out of the mansion to his own revelations.
Wesker?
Monster chains. Treat. Not says. Wave. What's outside the man?
The grotesque and awful story of Lisa Trevor. Her past is also detailed in pages scattered around the mansion. Experimented on and tortured for science, she limps around the grounds, groaning in agony, rattling her chains, and seemingly impervious to any kind of gunfire. Unable to be killed, she was locked away. Carrying the carved-off face of what she believes to be her mother's face, she now hunts for her lost mother to return what she thinks was stolen from her. It's pointless attacking Lisa. You do nothing but waste ammo. If you see her, run and keep your distance at all times. It is at this time where you can find the Magnum, a nice to have for Jill but a much needed power weapon for Chris. So make sure you have the Wind Crest in your inventory for this puzzle. A strange place to hide a weapon? Maybe, but there is a suspicious amount of graves around this place, and something tells me it can't all be friends and family resting here. Ammo for the Magnum is limited, but so long as you are turning those red rooms on the map green, you will find all you need to take down the biggest threats in the game. Except for maybe Lisa. Oh, and about this, I always make this mistake with this game, and I call it like the killer crab syndrome. Don't really know why I call it that. I must have heard it somewhere, maybe, I don't know. It's the practice of hoarding ammo and weapons and keeping them to one side for the next big bag that's coming around the corner, kind of like a giant killer crab boss, for example. But the thing is, you trick yourself into thinking, do you know what, I'm not going to use my weapon right now, because this boss, I can take him. I can take him with normal weapons. And, you know, I'll hoard the items more for the next big boss that comes around. Because you never know when that crab's going to turn up, man. So instead you use all your standard weapons, and you never use your power weapons. And you get to the end of the game, and you have all this ammo and weapons saved up, and you never use them once. So please, if you are going to play Resident Evil, don't leave yourself in a situation where you've used all your standard ammo up on, like, you know, Plant 42 or one of the other bosses, and you're running around with a knife because you don't dare use your grenade launchers or your magnum ammo. Just go ahead, just use it. Don't hoard it, please. I mean, don't go mad. Don't go using all your ammo on like a standard zombie or something for your Magnum. That'd be crazy. But have a little bit of fun. You know, the power weapons in Resident Evil tend to eat through the bosses really quickly. So if you wanted to use a few Magnum rounds on a hunter or acid rounds on a few of the spiders, go for it. Why not? Have fun. That's the point. That's why they're there. Remember, for any future games that kind of have this, where you can store weapons and magic and things up, that Killer Crab boss, man, he's a myth. He's not coming along. Just use your weapons, enjoy the game. He'll never turn up. He doesn't exist. It's all in our mind. Or is he? Chris finally finds his way to the residence, dealing with the many monsters he comes across and a few Jill has already taken care of. You will find a map on the wall in the corridors, but leave it where it is for now until you get the bug spray. See, the map is blocking a hole in the wall, preventing poisonous wasps flooding the rooms from a giant hive. The bug spray is with the body of a caretaker who died cradling it in his arms close to the hive. Doing this in the right order will save you having to deal with these annoying wasps and having to use blue herbs to heal you from the poison. Again, this is a nice touch, showing that people place things with reason and context within the game's lore, telling a short story with no dialogue or text, hinting towards panic and desperate struggles to stay alive or deal with the threats they were faced with. This is classic Resident Evil. It's not long until Chris finds his own struggles though, biting off more than he can chew with the fearsome Plant 42. A mutated plant that sucks the blood from its victims through suckers on its vines, it will soon melt the skin from your body to get your juicy insides with acid as you become plant food. It becomes more violent when it opens its petals, and that is when Chris goes to the high ground to dish out the major damage. While Chris wrestles with the plant slowly being eaten alive, Jill finds a giant aquarium under the residence. By this time you've come across many documents and this large underground facility that prove the people here were experimenting on a prototype virus, something that mutates life in horrifying ways, and this water facility was built to test it on plant life and live sharks. The results greatly increased their intellect, size and ferociousness. Until, you guessed it, someone screwed up. Scrambling into the laboratory, Neptune, the biggest of the sharks, hungry for blood, begins to ram the glass in an attempt to flood the lab where Jill was taking refuge. Overriding the system flushes out the water, and after one final flurry with from Neptune in an attempt to feed, Jill electrocutes the monster, giving her access to the containment area and the roots of Plant 42. Earlier, Jill mixed the chemicals after reading files on Plant 42 and found that mixing them in a certain order creates a chemical called V-Jolt. When applying this chemical to the roots, it kills Plant 42 in seconds. You don't have to do this, you can take on Plant 42 straight up. It might even be faster when speedrunning, but making V-Jolt will save you ammo. But to solve the puzzle, remember that water equals 1, and so long as you read your files and what is written on the walls of the medical room, you'll be fine. But if you are playing as Chris and didn't save Richard, you'll be forced to do this puzzle under a time limit with Rebecca. Good luck!
Oh, you scared me. You okay?
Yeah, it's dead. But Richard, he's gone.
Yummy.
Wesker!
There are still rooms in that mansion we can't get into because they're locked up.
Okay, if there's anything, I'll go back to the other mansion.
I'm counting on you.
Where's Jill? Thought you were with her.
Yeah, I know. We got separated.
If finding the residence didn't give you that feeling of dread, returning to the mansion on Wesker's orders certainly did, especially with the fearsome hunters now set loose. One of my favourite creatures in Resident Evil lore, these monsters are a result of splicing human and reptilian DNA together, with a bit of the virus to hold it all together. Fast, deadly and powerful, it is possible for these creatures to rid you of your head in one leaping claw swipe. Because they jump so high, you will need to aim up to interrupt them, and the L targeting comes in handy as they move faster than you can turn. Returning to the suspension mansion with the new key finds you dancing with hunters a lot. They are everywhere, and depending on your route through the mansion will be the deciding factor on whether or not you get the jump on these things or they get the jump on you. With Jill tasked in finding the second umbrella key to unlock a door behind the stairs of the mansion Grand Hall, it doesn't take Jill long to find an injured Enrico, leader of the STARS Bravo team, with a harrowing message. STARS didn't just stumble into the mansion, it was a setup. But why? With the umbrella key missing a part, Jill is forced to look deeper into the mines. Meanwhile, Chris has been given his own assignment. 2 medallions act as a lock to something buried under the mansion itself. And an old friend stands in the way of Chris finding one of them. This is your final battle with Yawn. The same rules apply. And remember, fight that giant crab boss syndrome. Use your guns! Also on Chris's travels, he comes across a Mo disc hidden behind a tiger head. This is very important for the last section of the game, so go store it for now. The Tiger Spider, bigger than the rest. I find this to be the easiest boss fight in the game, but it can catch you off guard if you're not in good health when you get to it. A few flame or acid rounds will finish this hairy beast off quickly. Oh, and you can use the knife to cut yourself out of here. There's one on the side. No one gets stuck here, do they?
Barry? Thank God you're safe.
You too, Jill.
Good to see Barry again. Jill goes deeper into the mines with Barry backing her up until Lisa. She gets around this place like Jason friggin' Voorhees. But running back, Barry has left Jill for dead. Jill gets past the creature and finds herself in what appears to be Lisa's home, almost like a shrine to her family. It is here that you find out that the Umbrella scientist tasked George Trevor with building this mansion in 1967 in the Arklay Mountains. It took 5 years, but he was commissioned to build the mansion in such a way that any intruder could be locked inside and sent on a labyrinthian-like puzzle to get out. On its completion, he and his family were invited to a celebratory dinner, but when they arrived, Lisa, his daughter, and his wife Jessica were kidnapped and used as human test subjects. George, desperate to save his family, ended up being caught in one of the very traps he created. Such was the plan as he came along his own tombstone left for him. Jessica didn't survive the experiments, but Lisa did, being the very first successful T-virus test subject. Nothing created by the T-virus is very pretty, but looking at Lisa you can see elements of what they did to her turn up in later experiments. Indirectly, Jill and Chris solving the mansion's puzzles result in lifting the stone lid from the grave that was separating Lisa from her mother, and with nothing left to live for, seeing her mother long dead, Lisa takes her own life. Thought-provokingly gruesome when you consider the case of Lisa Trevor. Was it as simple as the virus keeping her alive, where normal means failed, or something deeper? When you read the files and play through the events of the game, you can't help but think what makes us individual as humans plays a part in why the results of the virus differ in certain people. But there was more truth to uncover. After escaping Lisa and catching up with Barry, Jill demands answers. Barry takes Jill to Wesker, where he reveals the whole plot. Umbrella, the leading pharmaceutical company, and its founders were creating bioweapons, creatures to be sold to the highest bidder, to the world's leaders. STARS was sent to the mansion to not only tidy up the leaked projects that escaped the research facility, but also collect combat data. The highly trained team of special forces had been established to fight the monsters Umbrella completed, as teaser trailers for anyone interested to see what these products could do in a combat scenario. It was Wesker who sabotaged Bravo Team's helicopter to crash, and then sent the Alpha Team to their death in response. Only Wesker had his own plans, undercut Umbrella, and sell the data to one of the Umbrella's rivals instead. Being one of the lead scientists on the project the whole time, he had everything he needed to play the organizations against one another. Barry was a pawn in the whole thing. His family threatened by Wesker, he had to do everything he was ordered. That included turning on Jill. She was locked up, and then they turned their focus on the cleanup operation and Chris Redfield. Chris has found the medallions and made his way into the underground facility as well, where he comes across all the damning evidence of Umbrella and Wesker's involvement. How the monsters they had been fighting were not accidents after all, but purposely created as weapons. The final straw came when he saw the tape of his teammate Kenneth's final moments alive, before having his throat ripped out by one of the zombies Wesker helped create. With the truth exposed, Chris now knew he had to get his team out and destroy everything to contain the virus spread. It was then that it was set upon the Chimera, another experiment to create a powerful weapon, mixing human and insect DNA with the T-virus. These creatures scurry along the ceilings and creep out of vents like Jeff Goldblum in The Fly. Latching around you, they will lift you into the air if you let them. I don't mess around with these things. I put them down quick with grenades or shotguns, perhaps even the Magnum rounds if I have spare. As a rule, I keep at least 12 Magnum shots for the last boss. On Chris's final search of the facility, he comes across more of the Mo discs. Using these discs on terminals around the laboratory opens a special lock to Jill's holding cell. Remember this location, as you'll need to return here to get Jill out.
Chris?
Jill,
Chris? Wesker's the...
I know. Just wait, I'll be back.
Okay.
Chris catches up with Wesker, and now he reveals his most prized possession, the Tyrant. His dream project. Releasing this hulking creation, he hoped the Tyrant would finish Chris off, but it turned on Wesker first and killed him. Guess he wasn't that smart after all. Chris and Rebecca are left to finish off the creature, and this is as big a bad a monster in Resident Evil as it gets. The original in a long line of future Tyrant upgrades, such as Mr. X and Nemesis, the Tyrant is a powerhouse that changes from slow and foreboding strides to sprinting great distances in seconds. Pay close attention to the hand it chooses to attack with, and keep to the opposite side. Sink everything you have into it to drop it. With Rebecca okay, Chris unlocks Jill's cell and heads back to let her out.
Jill, sorry I made you wait.
I knew you'd come.
Let's get out of here.
Barry!
They all meet up with Barry, and with Wesker now dead, he knows his family are now safe. It was time to go. Rebecca goes to activate the facility's self-destruct that she located earlier, and they head to the surface to signal Brad, who luckily gained enough courage not to completely run away, but instead loot the mansion this whole time, waiting for a signal on where to touch down and pick up any survivors. But before they can board, the Tyrant has one last attempt on their lives. This is the game's final test of your resources. To be honest, so long as you turned all rooms on the map green, you shouldn't have too much of a problem. Of course, harder skill levels will test your final ammo count more. Providing you have at least 1 or 2 clips of the Magnum ammo, the Tyrant will be quick work. Soon Brad drops the missile launcher, and clearly Umbrella didn't try too many of these on their creations. As the helicopter lifts off, the ending is short but sweet, and will differ very slightly depending on who you manage to get out of the mansion in one piece. Rescuing your partner from the cell with the Mo discs and pressing that bloody hidden button at the back of Wesker's lab, saving Rebecca from the hunter, and choosing to give Barry back his gun against Lisa are what stand between you and the best ending. Resident Evil is a fantastic experience that keeps you guessing and has enough surprises for multiple playthroughs. Nothing quite beats your first paranoid trip through the mansion, but there is enough here, and once you've got used to the mechanics and the layout, to turn it into a really enjoyable speedrun game where you build up strategies and try and complete it in the fastest time you can. With the reward of unlocking unlimited ammo guns and new costumes and, you know, invisible zombies, explosive zombies, there's plenty to keep you playing and replaying the story mode over and over again. Where others tend to favour Resident Evil 2 or 4, and I get that completely, I will always favour Resident Evil 1 just because of its smooth learning curve and how it introduced me into the world of Resident Evil and its brilliant setting of Spencer Mansion. But I love talking about Resident Evil. I'd love to have some conversations about your favourite creatures or games in the comments below, and if you do decide to play Resident Evil this Halloween, again, love to hear about your playthrough and what happened and if you really enjoyed it. And now that's done, let's see if this zombie problem is taken care of.
Yeah, there you see, not a single zombie in sight. Playing video games solves everything. I do hope Sarah's okay. I did kind of leave her on her own there to fend against a massive zombie horde while I played video games all night. What am I saying? I bet she's super thankful. She did have plenty of ammo. Honey, don't worry about it. It's all taken care of. No need to thank me. I knew my game playing skills would come in handy. Playing games all night is kind of what I do. Don't get up, you look tired. Now it's touch and go there for a second, and you probably have to take care of a few zombies yourself. But your man who completed Resident Evil in one night and took care of everything. You motherfucker! We're gonna let Sarah rest for a while. She looks a bit stressed and tired, but all the zombies been taken care of. Another game from my past locked away in that memory card where it belongs. Just hope nothing else from Resident Evil got out, because that would be horrifying.
We shall meet again before the conclusion of this drama. Then, you will learn of the history I will write for this world.